Hey everyone, I'm Emery. I'm one of the co-owners here at Wilson & Claire Coffee, and today we are talking about the V60 coffee brewer. Specifically, we're going to be talking about my favorite way to brew coffee on the V60. So before we get started, let's talk about what we need to make coffee with the V60. So first of all, obviously you're going to need your V60. Then you're going to need something to catch the coffee. So this could be just a cup or one of these cool coffee servers. Next, you're going to need a scale, and this is going to be used to weigh your coffee, weigh the water. You'll also need something to heat up water. So I have this gooseneck kettle, and it gets this name just because of the spout. It has kind of this funny neck on it. It gives you a little more precision when pouring your coffee, but any kettle will do as long as you can heat up the water. Now the water here today, I'm heating up to 208 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, if you can't get it precise, feel free to just boil your water until it's at a rolling boil, and then take it off the heat and let it cool down for just a minute or two. Next, we have our filters for the V60. And then a cup for our coffee, obviously. And then finally, the ground coffee. Now, grinding the coffee when you're brewing can always be one of the most difficult things to get just right. So I'm actually gonna recommend a website, it's homegrounds.co. And we'll have this linked on our website where we'll have all the recipe at wilsonandclaire.com, and also have the links out for this chart. And they kind of break down what size grind you should use for every grinder and based on what brew method. So today I use a Bratza Encore grinder and I set it to 16, and that's what we'll be using today. And then finally, the coffee we'll be using is this Genja Chala Ethiopian coffee from Wilson & Claire. Okay, so let's get started. So first off, we're going to want to wet our filter. So first I'll just fold this and place this into our V60. Now, the reason that we're wanting to wet the filter before we actually start brewing our coffee is because this paper is gonna have its own flavor. It's gonna have kind of its own, stuff that we don't want to be in the coffee itself. So I'll just pour that in there, let it drip out for just a little bit, and that will just get out a lot of that excess temperature. So we'll now take the rest of that water that we don't really need and just get rid of that. Okay, so now that we've rinsed out our filter, let's go ahead and add the coffee. Now I've already weighed this coffee out to be 18 grams, but if you haven't already weighed it in, you just pour this in, make sure the scale's tiered, and then add in your 18 grams of coffee. All right. Okay, so now we got our coffee in there, our filter's been cleaned. We'll zero out the scale one more time. And now what we'll do is we'll start pouring. Now, before I get into this, let me just kind of explain what we'll be doing. There's a lot of different opinions on how best to pour your water. And it can get kind of complicated. So I like to keep it nice and simple. And I just use 60 grams of coffee or 60 grams of water. And I just pour it in there. Once the water level drops to the bed of the grounds, then I'll start again. So instead of trying to keep track of what time should I add more water, this gives a great visual indicator of when I need to add more coffee. Okay, so our first pour is technically called the bloom. And what this means is it's the first time you're adding water to the coffee. And since that coffee's been roasted, it has all this carbon dioxide that's been trapped inside. And so when the water hits the coffee, it's gonna allow that to off gas. So you'll see a lot of bubbling. And so once we do that first pour, we're gonna wanna allow that CO2 to escape for about 30 to 45 seconds before we begin the rest of our pours. Okay, so let's get started with our bloom. So I'll start my timer and start adding the water. As I'm adding, I'm watching the scale go up until I get to 60 grams. Then I stop it there and allow it to bloom off gas. And again, we're at 15 seconds now, and I'll just let that sit for another 15 seconds. All right, we've got 30 seconds now, and so I'll add my next increment of water. Again, I'm adding in 60 gram increments, so I'm pouring until I get to 120 grams. And then I'll stop and let the water and coffee grounds go down. Okay, the water's reached the bed of the coffee again, so I'm gonna add another 60 grams. All right, that's 300 grams. Now we're just gonna let the rest of that filter through. So a lot of times what people like to do is preheat their cup by adding some of the water that they use to brew the coffee to warm up the cup of coffee. Personally, I don't like to do this, mainly just because I like having a cold cup. because then it absorbs a lot of that energy when you pour the coffee into it to kind of bring the temperature down, because this is going to be about 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And so by cooling it off, then it makes it easier to drink right away. But if you're wanting it to last a little longer, you know, you definitely may want to preheat the cup. All right, looks like that's about it. We'll take that off. Now, enjoy our coffee. Well, I hope you found this video helpful. And if you want us to do other videos on how to do different brew methods, just leave a comment below. And until then, enjoy your coffee.